All right, everybody, mic check 1 2. Just checking in to make sure you guys can hear us okay. Feel free to let us know. I see green bars. Do you want to do a quick mic check?
Mic check. 1 2 1 2.
Cool, cool. I think we're up and running. We're good to go. Let us know if you can't hear, but otherwise, thank you so much, Cody. I appreciate you coming on the channel again. I had you on here man, 4 months ago, something crazy like that. Um, yeah, you were actually the first person I ever brought on to chat with me on a as far as like an interview. So welcome back. What's been going on with you since we last spoke?
Yeah, happy to be back. Not a whole lot crazy or new in my life. Just exploring a bunch of different topics within our field in recent times, and then just crushing it on the job and trying to get my personal life back in order. COVID has been rough in a lot of very weird ways. It hasn't really taken too many tragic tolls on my life, but it has certainly impacted it to some extent. So hopefully things start getting back to normal here soon.
Man, yeah. I mean, I'm glad that it seems, at least for me, that a lot of the COVID chaos is starting to kind of come full circle and hopefully mellow out a bit over time. I don't even want to get going about all of that drama in the vaccine. I mean, we can
Oh
have
yeah.
conversations all day long about that. For for those that may not know you or have heard of you before, you want to share a little bit about who you are, what you're doing, how you got into the field, and just give us a high level, who is
Yeah.
Cody?
So I am a senior network security engineer for a company in Missouri, and I do red team engagements for them. There's a lot of context that goes into that. So it's not the same as penetration testing, although there is quite a bit of overlap. It's in the context of what I do, we're very much concerned with our organization's security posture in the way that our defenders are able to detect and respond to threats. And so sometimes that involves penetration testing, sometimes that involves what we call purple team engagements, where we'll kind of look at the MITRE ATT&CK framework, or we'll look at different policies and different business continuity operations, where we'll bring in an adversarial mindset and try to see what our organization is doing right and what it's probably needing improvements on. And then aside from that, I've a one stripe blue belt in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu now, so I'm very, very excited to continue that journey. But aside from that, just a regular dude on a keyboard.
Nice, man. I think that's awesome. You've got a really cool job. I think a lot of people look at that as like a dream job to get into, and um, you know it, this conversation I wanted to kind of frame around certifications. You hold a few now that are really really difficult certifications. OSCP, OSCE, and the eCPPT. Right, that was your most recent one, right?
Yes,
When did you get the OSCE? How long have you had that?
I've had that for a little over a year now. I think I passed in early February of last year.
Nice. Would would you say the jump from OSCP to OSCE, how was that transition as far as like the amount of knowledge you needed to gain, or was it kind of unrelated to each other?
It's very nuanced. So the legacy CTP course by Offensive Security has very much shown its age, and I think they made the right choice in retiring that course and splitting it up into their three new courses. So I can't remember exactly what all of the acronyms stand for, but they have one around advanced web exploitation, another one against advanced penetration testing and evading defenses, and then their most recent one for kind of advanced stack-based buffer overflow exploit development. And the legacy CTP course was very much in line with those. It's just the mitigations that have been introduced into Microsoft Windows since that course was conceptualized have rendered a lot of the techniques, I don't want to say irrelevant, but definitely kind of past their time. And so the the skill jump that one would have needed if we were to go back in time, the skill jump between PWK and the old OSCE is much smaller than the new skill gap between the new PWK and the 3 new courses. It's it's really hard to contextualize that, but there's there are very good pieces of information that one should take the time to explore. And so like if you are doing modern penetration tests, you should know how to bypass antivirus. You should know how to address EDR systems, because there are things that you can do in the labs that you cannot do on assessments. So things like disabling firewalls or turning off antivirus, you can't do that on real assessments, because one, I'm pretty sure that's illegal, but two, even if that was magically in scope somehow, I mean, it kind of speaks to the I don't want to be insulting about it, but it kind of speaks to the lack of experience if that's your solution for those mitigations. Because if your answer to a real engagement is making a system weaker to demonstrate impact, that's not going to be doing justice by the organization that you're trying to help.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I could.
So,
Oh,
go ahead.
well, I could say I could see maybe showing like a proof of concept that's like we were able to disable your antivirus, right? And like that maybe would be a finding in a report that you'd want to talk about, but then you wouldn't actually disable the AV other than that proof of concept. Because that might be something that the client would want to be aware about so that doesn't happen, obviously, in a real attack scenario. But no, I mean, that's 100% like what you're saying makes a lot of sense. If that's how you rely on, making a system weaker, creating holes that weren't really there, then why did the client bring you in? They want to see, hey, based on what we've got going on, how's our security posture look?
Yeah, and that's really the what the focus of the old OSCE course was. It wasn't so much like the specific use cases that were taught in the course. It was more, okay, you're faced with mitigations on an assessment. How can you kind of sneak your way past those to demonstrate impact on bugs that are a little bit harder to exploit? So cross-site scripting and blind SQL injection are like the perfect example of that. So there's cases where to demonstrate impact, if you find those bugs on an engagement, it's perfectly acceptable to do this. It's just there's better ways to demonstrate impact than putting on alert boxes or injecting sleep queries.
Yeah.
Like there will be people in an organization that will understand that, but there will be a lot of people in an organization that don't understand that. And those are the people that you want to win over when you're trying to demonstrate impact. And that's where that course really was trying to shine for aspiring pen testers.
Nice. I could see that being helpful for bug bounty hunters too, right? That need to be able to demonstrate impact, because the more impact they can demonstrate, the more of a bounty that they could get paid, assuming everything's within scope of what they're allowed to be doing, of course.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, that's
but
awesome.
That kind of opens up a different conversation about eCPPT and OSCP, in that, well, okay, if there's these other fields of pen testing that are a little more advanced and they can be used to demonstrate bigger impact, what does that say about the skill sets that you come out of PWK or eCPPT with? And I can see both sides, because they are difficult courses. I'm not going to say they're not. They are, but on the same note, they're also still just like the first level, and there's like 99 more levels to go after that.
Right. What
So
level are you on now? Would you say now that you've been able to get
uh,
those certifications?
level 1.5 for sure.
I think we all feel that way. You know, it's all of us are like, man, we don't know what the hell we're doing. Um, but no, dude, you've got talent. You know, I look at some of the content you create online, and just even the stuff that you say in the Discord channels that we're a part of, and the way you help people. Like you should pat yourself on the back. It's not easy to land, you know, those three certifications that you have, even if they're considered level one or whatever. You know, and the OSCE, I would not consider that to be, you know, a level one cert. OSCP, yes, but um, would you say that even though the OSCE content that you went through was outdated, I felt that way about the OSCP when I first went through it because I got the material that was recorded in like 2013, my first go through the PWK course, and yeah, they were like showing us, you know, Windows XP systems and stuff like that. Um, would you say that OSCE, even though it was outdated and maybe the exact attacks that they showed you wouldn't necessarily work in a modern computer, did it still teach you a lot of the methodology that's always the same across the board, or is that more of a OSCP type benefit?
It, there is definitely um, some modern concepts that you can take away from the old OSCE course, and the I'm probably one of very few people that will tell you that because there's this huge misconception that OSCE was a binary exploitation course when it wasn't. Uh, it was certainly a large part of the course material, but there was still, you know, leveraging cross-site scripting with, you know, cross-site request forgery to do much more deeper exploitation of that bug, and there was still antivirus evasion and bypassing ASLR, which is still relevant. It's just the means by which we do those things have changed significantly. So like you're going to run into trouble combining cross-site scripting with CSRF attacks, just with the prevalence of HTTP only and secure cookies, and you know CSP cores. There's a whole ton of crap that's been thrown into the mix since then, but there's still opportunities that are available, and that's where we want to be shining as pen testers.
Definitely, definitely. So the eCPPT, for whatever reason, I have trouble with that. I have to like think through it.
Me too.
They made it too difficult. Uh, is that one? Is there a huge jump in knowledge from OSCP, or you feel like someone who did the OSCP could probably just hop straight in and knock that other one out pretty quick?
This is going to be a very honest opinion, and I would be remiss to not admit that I have a little bit of bias in the mix, just because of how significant of an impact OSCP has had on my life. But if if money isn't a factor for people coming into the field, and they are maybe intimidated by the PWK, eCPPT would be a good choice for them to get going into entry level pen testing. It's 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 not a bad course. In its own right, it is a good course. It's just it is now running into the same issues that the old PWK course was running into.
Interesting.
So you will often hear that that course teaches Active Directory, but it does not.
Really? Okay.
So there's this huge misconception that running responder and doing poisoning attacks is equivalent to AD attacks. And, you know, to be fair, there's a little bit of overlap, but they're two totally different things. You know, you're not exploiting cross-domain trusts. You're not abusing Kerberos misconfigurations. You're not doing anything like that in eCPPT. And it's the little that they teach in that realm is solely just responder and multi-relay, and it's very nuanced use case examples of that. So if you're looking to explore Active Directory as part of your growth as a penetration tester, eCPPT is not going to be the certification for you to do that. OSCP is now. It wasn't before, but it is now. And even then, some people have a little bit of amnesia because granted, there wasn't a lot of Active Directory exploitation content in PWK originally. There was a course revision, I want to say right around 2015 or 2016. There was some Active Directory content put into the course. It's just, again, it was very specific, like finding that domain service account password in the sysvol share, and really, really specific one-off kind of stuff. But like, here's how I would kind of categorize the three in terms of value to new pen testers. I would absolutely put OSCP at the top of the list. If you're intimidated by the material, or if you don't have a whole lot of computing experience or a solid computing background, eCPPT is a good choice. And ever since eLearn Security has pushed all of their course material over to INE, I mean, that's great value. I mean, you can sign up for, what was it, like $750 annually? And all you have to pay for on the side is just the cost of the certification. You don't even have to sign up for INE.
Is it really
I mean,
that cheap? I thought it was more than that. That's crazy.
And I could be wrong on that, but as far as I know, the maximum cost, if you really wanted to go all out and get the course materials and take the certification exam, the maximum cost would be the cost of the eCPPT certification exam voucher, and potentially, if you really wanted to, a INE subscription. So, I mean, it has become more cost effective.
Awesome.
And I think that's a good thing for it.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, OSCP really gives you a solid and a very strong foundation in penetration testing. And between the two courses, the value that you get from OSCP is, in my opinion, better than eLearn Security's eCPPT.
Well, we're done. You ranked them, so that's it. We got nothing else to talk about. No, man. Like that's really powerful to hear, in the sense that even when you throw OSCE in the mix, it's a more advanced course, but you got more out of the OSCP journey. And I can relate, even though I haven't done the OSCE, I can relate 100% that I don't even have my OSCP yet. But what the OSCP has done for me, just going down that certification route, and the people it's introduced me to, and the things that it's taught, have allowed me to go and live out my dream job, and I've had multiple pen testing opportunities because of it. So yeah, it's for those that haven't seen it yet. Cody has a video that he uploaded where he talks about how hacking saved his life, literally, and the OSCP was an integral part of that story. So I would highly recommend checking out his channel. The link's in the description. Look at that video. Maybe like it for me, when I watch it, it pulled on my emotional heartstrings a little bit. So just a little bit of a warning there. But the story, and I just want to thank you publicly for sharing that story, because I think it's really powerful for people to hear.
Yeah, and I was really surprised by the responses that I got. A lot of people have shared their own stories with me in private, and I have never aspired to be, that kind of foundation for other people. And it was difficult just reading some of the responses that I got. And maybe there's some parts of my story that people can't relate to. The consensus that I got was that there was in people's own ways, there was a lot about my story that people were able to relate to. And I hope through doing this talk, I'm able to do the same thing, just for building people's foundations up.
Definitely. Well, yeah, I mean, again, and that story was inspiring for sure. I'm seeing some chatter in the conversation, or in the chat, about kind of confirming that cost. What you said, the 750 a year, that's insane. I last I looked, I think it was like 2,000 a year for that INE training. So the fact they dropped that down, I've got no excuse. I should I should actually just go and take a certification. Are there other certs that you're looking down in the INE world or the eLearn security world, or are you gonna try to go for some of the new OSCP or offensive security certs? Does that matter to you anymore?
OSCE 3, so I can reclaim my legitimacy as an OSCE, is
Nice,
part of the plan.
nice.
So I fully intend to pursue the 3 new courses. As far as eLearn security is concerned, I don't want to say that I've disregarded them at all. I would love to take eCPTX at some point, their advanced Active Directory and penetration testing course. I would love to do that at some point. But I'm not going to lie. I was a little surprised and taken back just from all of the praise that I had heard from people with that I have respect for and admire, and I just was not impressed with my experience.
In
So I hope eLearn Security takes the opportunity to really give that course a good overhaul, because I think it deserves it.
Now, do you think that mainly because of the fact that it seems a bit outdated, or do you just think that from your experience on the eLearn platform that it just doesn't teach you in the same way that offensive security did? Like, what's your reasoning behind that?
the The way that their course materials are organized is very good. So they'll have like a internal web portal that you're able to kind of look at all of your course modules, and they're all organized with associated videos and labs and downloadable materials. The way the material is organized is awesome. Even the content of their written material is good. It's just it goes like an inch deep and like 10 miles wide.
Okay.
And it's not that the material was bad. It's just they didn't have the depth that I think would be necessary for someone looking to do penetration testing as a full-time job. Beyond that, the exam, I'm not going to go into exam spoilers, but the exam was good, but again, the environment is certainly showing its age, and there's there was some knowledge that you needed to pass the exam if you had never been exposed to that information before that I don't recall was in the course.
Okay. Which is
So
which is kind of similar to how OffSec does it. I I'd argue at least that there's been stuff in the OSCP that they kind of expect you to know, especially when it comes to privilege escalation, that they don't cover in the course. They'll scratch the surface and they'll say like these are some ways to do priv-esc, but it's not all of the ways that you'll come across in the labs and in the exam. Um, I've heard before where eLearn security has been kind of described as more of like it's a path that is going to hold your hand a little bit more and kind of walk you through things a little bit more than some of the certifications that offensive security has. Would you agree with that, or would you say that that's not true?
to an extent, kind of. Um, but again, that's more in the way that they organize and almost gamify their course materials. So like you can track your progress as you're going through the course. They have like little check boxes next to each course module. So you get that visual feedback about how you're progressing along with the course materials. Whereas offensive security, they don't do that.
Really?
They very much throw you into the deep end and hope that you can swim. Which, I mean, there's people that like that.
Yeah.
I certainly was one of them, and I don't want to say that the teaching style between the two is what really counts. My judgment between the two is very purely based off of the content, or the quality of the content of the courses. And in my opinion, I believe offensive security has done more due diligence for their course than e-learning security has.
It kind of sounds like it feels a little bit like hack the box is versus try hack me, right? You got like hack the box, which kind of feels more like the offsec, and then try hack me is a little bit more guided, and they give you feedback as you go, and they've got learning pads, and yeah, it kind of, I mean, I'm making that, I'm not speaking for you, I'm making that connection, but because that's what it sounds like to me.
Yeah, and I think that's a fair analogy to make for it.
Yeah.
You know, it's not that one course is bad or that one course is superior to all other courses. That's not what it's about. It's just the means by which they have gone about building those courses. There's a very significant difference between the two.
For sure, and I mean, I think that that's important to have, because by having the different types and methods to learn, it's gonna appeal to one person where it may appeal to a different person differently. You
Yep.
know, so that's cool. How do you feel like these certifications have helped you? I mean, are you taking these just for your own personal agenda, or is it something that you're directly applying back at your job? What's kind of made you want to do this to begin with?
The biggest motivating factor for me is that um, I I recognize that there's a lot of opportunities for people to research many of the topics taught in these courses on their own, and you can do that totally for free. But what you don't get out of that is leverage for job interviews. So, I mean, to an extent, you do. But, if you can't get past HR,
Yeah.
like even though you have the knowledge, if you can't get past HR because, you're not competing with, I don't know, the Ivy League dude that, graduated from frickin' Columbia and, is just at the right place at the right time career wise. Like, I don't, because that's happened to me before. I've been in a job interview where I was the technically superior candidate, and this was admitted to me by the hiring manager months afterward. And the only reason that this other candidate was chosen over me was because they looked better on paper. And I don't want to be in that position again. Like if I'm going into any future potential jobs, I'm going to come in with like a freaking sledgehammer. I'm going to be like, I've arrived. What's up?
Right.
I don't ever want to be shut down because someone else looks better than me on paper. I want to be able to at least get past HR and make my case.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's when I listen to people like Nahamsek, or people that are really active in the bug bounty community. Most of them, if you watch any of of Nahamsek's streams where he has people come in and interview, he asks almost every single one of them, "What certifications do you have?" And a good percentage don't have any. A lot of the super successful bug bounty hunters don't have it. That doesn't mean they don't know how to hack. It just means they're not worried about the HR filter. You know, do you feel like that's for people like us who are looking to do more of the pen test route, not the bug bounty route? We work directly with companies. Do you feel like having to go through all of the hoops and paying for certifications and getting the official piece of paper? Do you feel like that's a hindrance for us in any way? Um, like, for example, it could take you away from learning, what it is you want to learn, but instead you got to go through the certification path and learn what this certification tells you.
I don't necessarily think so. Obviously, when you're at the point where you're ready to start looking for jobs, you want to be mindful of how your resume reflects the content of the job posting. That's probably the best advice that I can give on that subject, because for a lot of people, they don't need to get certifications to get past HR. I was not one of those people, and I don't think I will ever be one of those people, because just like from my own experiences, I've been invited to huge companies, and I didn't want to go through with it because I know exactly what my experience with their HR department is going to be like. They're going to be like, well, you're not the equivalent of this dude from Harvard that we have applying for us. So we're not even going to bother going through with that. So it's just like, all right, well, let me get a solid foundation and knowledge base and certifications that can back that up, where I can, poop on this dude's qualifications from outer space. That's that's where I'm coming at with certifications, and you have to choose them. You have to choose the ones that you do very carefully, because it's not that you can get too many of them. To an extent, that's kind of true. It's just you have to choose very carefully of the ones that you have and how relevant they are to the job that you're applying for.
Makes sense for sure. Yeah, and instead of maybe doing like the entire alphabet on your resume, you might just pick the top three most relevant or something. If
Yes,
you're
absolutely.
if you're in that position where you can do that, see, and that's I think for people that are in a position where they've gotten that many relevant at least certifications, then they're in a pretty good spot. Um, I don't think that they'll have too much trouble finding a spot here in cybersecurity. But so you want to go down the route of getting the new three certifications that came out from offensive security. Do you have one that you're most excited for?
Um, Between the three, I don't think so. Not anymore, at least. I was excited for the OSED, but I was I was kind of hoping offensive security would do content outside of just exploiting the stack, because there's a whole class of vulnerabilities outside of stack-based buffer overflows, and those ones you can still find them. And like, as a matter of fact, like, memory corruption bugs are still one of the most disclosed bugs it ever. Like, you can go on MITRE's website, you can look at all of the different classes, you can sort them by which ones are reported most. Yes, buffer overflows are very close to the top of the list, but so are heap overflows, use after freeze, null pointer to references. They're still out there and they still exist. And I was really hoping that offensive security would have kind of branched into those bug classes a little more, but I think they have reserved that for OSCE. So I guess long term, if I'm looking forward to anything, it would be that one. It's just it is a very long road to get to that point.
Yeah. Cool. I from what I've seen, I watched John Hammond's video on the OSEP, and I don't even have my OSCP yet, and watching that video has got me like pumped up to go and try to do that certification. Something about especially like internal network pen testing and advanced evasion and all that. I feel like that's just fun. Like, I feel like it wouldn't feel like studying. It wouldn't feel like work. It's just fun. And that seems to be kind of like your thing when it comes to binary exploitation and buffer overflows. Like, you really seem to like that stuff.
Yeah, I do. It's had a very special place for me, but web attacks have also had a special place for me. And that's why it's hard for me to choose between the three, because like I don't want to be kind of cliche about it, but I mean, it's kind of like, I love the whole realm. I love everything about it, and I want to explore as much of it as I can, as deeply as I can. And so like, so let me preface this with the internet was a very different place 13, 14 years ago. But the first SQL injection tutorial I had ever read was being demoed on a security firm that had written a blog post about how to defend against SQL injection. So, like, seeing the irony of that situation was what really got me excited about web attacks. And just having seen how much the field has really expanded since that time is absolutely amazing. So like, the Web Application Hackers Handbook is still a great resource, but there has been like many tens of classes of different vulnerabilities that have come to light since that book was written, and there's not a lot of, I guess, professional or like paid based resources for people to pursue to get more knowledge of that. That's where you really have to take ownership of your own ability to research.
Yeah, yeah. The web space is something that I, from my experience with talking with companies last year, web app pen testing seems to be like super super hot. Like if you're gonna go and work for a consultancy, their bread and butter is web apps. So if you can't do web application pen testing, it might be tough to land a job unless they just happen to have a lot of network assessments or social engineering engagements lined up or something like that. But the majority of what they do, from who I talked with, was web apps. And I agree. It was kind of tough trying to find good content out there in the web application pen testing space. So I started trying to hunt down resources, and I found Pen Tester Labs was pretty good. They've got some solid web app stuff training wise, and then Portswigger Web Academy is amazing. I would highly recommend that for anyone who's looking to get into that space. But as far as the certifications go, like official certification paths, that's a huge question that I have. And it's like, well, which option do I take? Because I know eLearn Security has some web app focused courses, and now obviously Offensive Security has a web app focused course. But from my understanding, that's more of a like a open. It's like a white box web app course, the new one that they've got, and so it's a lot of code review. And if you're not super familiar with programming or developing, then it could be kind of difficult for someone like me because I don't know how to code worth shit. So, you know, um, how do you program? Are you able to code well? Do you feel like that's a crucial skill to being successful here?
This is going to be a hot take, and will potentially piss a lot of people off. But yes, it is. So, like, Live Overflow had done a video recently about this exact topic, and I totally agree with him. I think you can get to a certain level of competency with knowing very little programming, but you will eventually hit a wall, and
I agree.
you'll get to a point where maybe you're able to find bugs on the job, but maybe there's some mitigation in place, or maybe there's just some very strange business logic that market tools aren't able to really identify and address. So you're going to end up pigeonholing yourself into a place where you can find bugs, but you can't demonstrate impact because you don't have the experience to understand how the code flows through that, or you're going to be waiting on your peers in the industry to release a tool to be able to do that for you,
Yeah.
and it's only going to hold you back. And I wish more people were more accepting of that mindset, because it's true. I mean, you can throw out any situation that you can think of on a modern pen test. I'm sure. I mean, it's happened to me. I'm sure it's probably happened to you too. Like, you'll get to a point and you'll just be like, "Well, I don't know, and I don't know how to demonstrate impact on this." And understanding programming, at least one language to a mediocre level. And when I say mediocre, I don't mean just basic stuff that you can look at on YouTube. I mean a truly mediocre level. That's desirable for you, because at the very least you'll have these concepts of programming in general to where you'll be able to at least point yourself in the right direction.
Yep. For sure. Yeah, no, I mean, I'm not a developer, and that's been one of the biggest challenges for me. And I think my the amount that I'm able to help is limited as well, because yeah, I can find bugs, I can find vulnerabilities, and even if I'm able to demonstrate impact at a certain point, I have to stop there. Whereas if I understood, the code that actually caused the vulnerability, then I could take it further and I could be more helpful to the people that I'm going to and saying, look, you've got this hole, you need to fix this hole. here's exactly what you could write in to fix it. Like here's literally the type of function you need to use instead, or whatever the case is. And I can't do that currently, And so I think for people that can, they they're in a much better position. Plus, you're more efficient, right? Because if you can automate something, then you can just get you can have a tool do the work for you. So that's cool.
Yeah, and so like in the space of red teaming, the pre-engagement infrastructure that you have to set up for your C2, there aren't tools that can do that for you. Like you have to know what you're doing to design your C2 in a manner where it's getting around antivirus and EDR and IPS, maybe even in some case AMC if you're unfortunate enough to have to deal with that. There's just a level of depth that if you want to really be good, and I don't want to sound gatekeepy by saying this, but if you want to truly be good, you're going to have to understand programming beyond just the basics. And I don't want to make that sound like I'm an awesome programmer. I'm not. I'm very much an average Python coder at best. I have never done programming professionally ever in my life, and I don't want to. But at the very least, you have to continue exploring it. And it's got to be more than one language too, especially if you want to get into like the levels of like Harmjoy
Yeah,
or people like Live Overflow. You're gonna have to know more than one language,
yeah,
and you're gonna have to know more than one language at a deep level, because you're not gonna be right. If you for some reason find a stack-based buffer overflow today, it's not going to be as easy as doing like an OSCP level buffer overflow. It's just not, and you're going to need to know assembly to be able to do that.
yeah. Those are all awesome points, solid points for sure. Um, where did you kind of get? Because I feel like the knowledge that you have in order to be a successful red teamer, obviously there was a lot of learning that was unrelated to these certifications that you've done. Um, so are there? How did you kind of get to that? Was most of that just on the job experience and kind of figuring out, learning from your coworkers, or were there a lot of just sleepless nights, putting in the hours, doing your own research and digging in?
Okay, so I'm about to sound like one of those I've been doing this for 20 years people. Um, I, I don't want to go into my thoughts about those people, but I've been a hobbyist programmer since I was about 15 years old, and I've been in the studying space of ethical hacking since I was about 17, just shortly before I turned 17. So there's a long period of time for me to look at different subjects, and some of it was wasted time for sure, but a lot of it was just going through CTFs, ctftime.org, fantastic website. You can join any team in the world that you want. Just sign up and say, hey, I want to join your team, and you're good to go. Places like Hack the Box and Try Hack Me are good. I don't want to pigeonhole them just into like network pen testing, but like some of their side challenges are good too, and I would highly encourage anybody to explore that, because some of those reversing challenges, they'll give you key pieces of information that are helpful to binary exploitation, but they'll also give you skills to be perhaps a good malware analyst if you wanted to. There's a lot of room for movement, just doing these weird side challenges, and that was probably the biggest factor in how my skill set had gotten so broad.
That's awesome.
But building your own labs, I think, is a very close second. Actually, I would probably put building your own labs at number one, because there's situations that you might not be able to experience on a CTF that you can experience if you build and design your own lab. Plus, you get the engineering experience along with it.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, understanding how to deploy them is and how they kind of operate and set up and were set up is kind of fundamental for being able to break into them, right? So, um, cool. What we've kind of covered a lot of stuff, man. what what certifications then do you think are going to be like what's the next one in the list that you're going to start it?
I am slowly crunching away at OSWE every day.
Okay.
Um, I th- I think for posterity's sake, I think OSEP is going to be the logical next step for me. Just it'll be immediately useful for me on the job.
Do you do them simultaneously, or do you knock them out one and then you start the next one, or is there ever any overlap?
I have made one exception for doing them simultaneously, and that was eCPPT along with OSWE. But that was because I kind of suspected it was going to be easy for me. And it may be for a lot of other people as well. There's some really talented people out there, and they're able to do multiple courses at the same time. But outside of that one instance, I usually like to take courses slowly and really take my time with the materials to understand what I'm looking at.
What's that time commitment look like? Like how many hours a week would you estimate that you put into that?
Um, so it I don't know if I can quantify it in hours. It'd probably be easier for me to talk about what a regular day for me looks like.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Take us through the a day in the life.
yeah, so I'll be doing things on the job, right? 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Research for very specific things that I come across throughout the day will be part of that. And then after work, I'll play Call of Duty for a little bit or go to jujitsu just to relieve some stress because doing that for like 8 or 9 hours a day will take its toll on you. And then if you're like me and then you come back to it again until like 2 or 3 in the morning because you can't turn your brain off, you need those little breaks as often as possible. So that's kind of how I would summarize my typical day. I'm spending most of it at my computer, and whether I'm actively doing something on an engagement or interacting with people at work or doing research on my own, there's a significant amount of my time that is spent doing that.
Yeah. And where do you kind of find in time for the content creation? Because you're doing that as well.
Usually on the weekends. So, like after a rambunctious evening, I'll come back and I'll be like, oh, well, what are some cool ideas for content that I can put out there? So far, I I haven't plagiarized offensive security by any means, but there is very similar content between my recent technical videos and some of the content that offensive security has in some of their courses, and there's a reason for that. So I don't want to be a plagiarist, so that's why you create the situations in different contexts as best as you can, but ultimately the methodology is going to be the same.
Yeah.
And that's true for both what you learn in these courses and what you do on the job.
I think when it comes to technical videos, content that you're pushing out is definitely in my top 3 favorite creators list. So I'm really enjoying the technical stuff you're putting out there. So thank you for doing that. I know there's a huge time commitment that most people don't understand goes into that content creation. So just know that it's valuable and people appreciate it. So keep it up if you can.
Yeah, the things that I'm trying to do, I want to share the skill sets that I've been able to grow from offensive security, but again, I want to be able to do that without plagiarizing their content. So just I think that's an important thing for me to be upfront about because I think someday down the road that could be a thing of controversy You just be like, oh well, CW Infosec showed freaking RCE via XSS in a really similar way to what I saw in an offensive security course. So I mean, I'm wholly expecting people to be like that at some point, but that's not what it's about. You know, it's about taking advantage of bugs, spreading information, being able to really grow people's skill sets.
So on that topic, it's like when I first started getting into content, I started by asking Reddit. I was on Reddit and I was like, if I were to create a blog and if I were to just do a write up on Hack the Box, would anybody care? Like, what? Would you want to watch that? And the responses were overwhelming with everyone that's just like, yeah, like, do it, man, do it. And what I found was people learn differently. And even though you're doing something that was taught in one way, and it may have been done 1,000 times, you might have a way of explaining it that's going to resonate with one person more than the other, kind of like we talked about earlier. And so even if you're, I think it is important not to literally rip the content, but
Yes.
if you're taking the methodologies that you're learning, but you're applying them in other scenarios that people are going to come across in the real world, and you make a video and you explain it in your own way, there's nothing wrong with that at all. In fact, I mean that's every course ever.
It's
So,
true.
yeah. Yeah. So no, man, I love the stuff that you're putting out for sure. It's really cool stuff. Someone in chat mentioned earlier they were like, "Hey, are we ever gonna see Cody come on and do a live stream sometime? Are we gonna be able to watch him do Hack the Box or anything like that?" Do you foresee that ever being a possibility?
I I don't want to say no. Um, I don't want to shy away from any potential opportunities. It's really hard to shine in that space just because of how big IPSEC is in that space. And like he's going to be able to explain things much better than I can. I mean, like that's just a fact. He is very good at what he does, and I it's not about stepping on toes. It's just, I mean, I could absolutely do things like that. It's just I think people would be better suited going elsewhere for that kind of content. Because I don't think I'm going to be able to do people the same level of justice that IPSEC or people like him are going to be able to do. And I don't want to make that sound like I'm shitting on any other content creators that do that. I don't want to make that case at all. I think if you have a perspective to share, go ahead and share it, because you don't know how somebody's going to interpret that. They might say something from IPSEC and they'll be like, well, this was way too high level for me. Let me go to one of these smaller YouTubers. Let me see somebody that is more relatable to me in a personal way,
Exactly.
that
Yep.
maybe I can pick up some of their tricks from.
Yep. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. 90% of the stuff that I have on my blog, and a lot of that's translated into YouTube videos now. But 90% of it, I would say, is just I learned something watching an IPSEC video, and I was like, oh, I need to remember how to do this later. So I made a blog post about it, and it's just basically ripped from his videos. So, but it's been helpful, and it's been my public notes. And as time has gone, I've edited them to make them more, have my own feel. But that's just people sharing knowledge, and you take what you take and you make it your own. And I think that's open game. So cool.
One thing that I hope will happen soon. Every once in a while, I will try to do a disclosure, and from my most recent one, which was May of last year, I had in recent months built a VulnHub machine around that vulnerability. So I'm hoping that's a way for me to kind of spread my knowledge in that space without directly making content for it.
Nice.
So if people are interested in that kind of stuff, I'm hoping Got Milk will have a lot of success moving houses. I hope his family is in good health, but I'm very, very excited to see him return. He has been AFK for several months now. So hopefully sometime soon you guys will be able to explore that box.
Awesome.
But I'd like to continue doing stuff like that in the future. So maybe that would be something people would be interested in. But that's about the extent of my plan for growing in like the hack the box fall and hib kind of space.
Well, cool. Right on, man. Or so offensive security has a lot of labs and their certifications that are really similar to Hack the Box. I mean, not all of them, right? Some of the Hack the Box machines are very, very CTFE, and some of them are more difficult than, say, OSCP. Um, how about eLearn security? Can you don't? I mean, obviously, don't share, overshare, or anything, but for the lab machines that eLearn security has, from your experience going through that, would you feel like you gained, some? Was it worthwhile? Were the labs specifically worthwhile?
The labs were. Not all of the labs were, but many of the labs were. And they were organized in a way so instead of, again, like being thrown into the deep end like you would be in PWK, each of eLearn Security's eCPPT labs are directly related to a module that they're associated with. So, if as an example, if you're going through the web content, they're going to have labs that are specific to that web content. And I really like the way that they organize that. It's just there is a need to have like a open range environment, and I kind of wish eLearn Security would have done something similar. But I mean, even though they didn't, I mean, there's still other resources like virtual hacking labs, cybersecurity labs, Hack the Box, Try Hack Me, of
Yeah.
course. There's a lot of alternatives to that. It's just um, some of the labs in eLearn Security's course were just. I don't want to be overly critical of them, but they were so outdated, they were almost irrelevant. So one example that I can think of would be like doing art poisoning with Cain and Abel.
Wow.
You're if you try and drop Cain and Abel on an environment, you're gonna get like if you're doing red team, you're gonna get caught immediately.
Yeah. Dude, I used to.
Two, there's better tools to do that with.
Right. I used Cain and Abel, man, back in like 2007, 2008, I think. I wanted to try to get IP addresses from people I was playing Xbox Live with. So I used Cain and Abel from that back when I was a kid. Yeah, that was the very first hacking utility I think I ever used. Man, that brought me back. That's crazy.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm talking about. Where I say the course is just a little lackluster.
Cool. Well, I mean, I appreciate it. I think we're coming up on an hour here. If anybody in chat has any questions for Cody before we let him go, definitely feel free to drop them in. If you've asked questions and I missed you, go ahead and re-ask them so that way they kind of pop up again for us. Are there any closing thoughts as to wrap up the conversations around certifications that we haven't talked about? Any key items you wanted to hit?
Yes. I want to kind of circle back to PWK and eCPPT kind of being like level 1 of the ethical hacking world. It doesn't mean that, like I was saying before, it doesn't mean that they're easy courses by any means. They're not. They are difficult courses. But I hope people are courageous enough to take them on because they are worth it, and they will. I mean, even with my own biases against eCPPT, it's not a bad course. It is not a bad course. But you really should not be afraid of these courses. They can be passed, and even then, going beyond those courses, when you really start growing as a penetration tester or a red teamer, don't be afraid of the material that you'll have to learn and digest. It'll be difficult for sure. Getting growing as a programmer will be difficult, and there will be a lot of time spent on those endeavors, but they are ultimately worth it. And I hope people will be more willing to really dive deep into the things that they want to do, because again, I'm kind of going against the grain with this. There's people that kind of advocate for being a jack of all trades. I do not want to be a jack of all trades, and I understand there's going to be areas that I will not be as good as someone else in. Even that's okay. It is okay to not be as good as someone else, but I want to master at least one thing, and I'm on the journey to find that.
That's awesome. I think that that's really, I think that's really cool about the industry that we're in. It's like when people talk about pen testing, it's already a niche piece of cybersecurity. And I'm saying pen testing, but I just kind of mean that as offensive security as a whole. It's such a niche thing, but even within that, there are so many subcategories. I mean, just look at every different certification out there, right? Each one of those is kind of its own subcategory. So yeah, there's having that specialty where you can be a super elite talent with whatever particular skill set that you like the most. I think is more valuable. I agree with you. Than necessarily just being a jack of all trades, where you could do anything, you could go anywhere, but it's like, if you want to be the best, it's find something that you really love and just dive right into it. If you're watching this as a viewer and you're just wondering, it's like, like, oh, I want to get into pen testing, or I want to become a hacker, but I don't really know where to start. For me, it took me months of just lurking on Reddit and reading people talk about the OSCP. I knew I wanted to do the OSCP because it seemed to be like the gateway and the entry into the world, and I think it is, and I'd highly recommend it. But it took me forever of just being on the fence before I did it, and it took somebody on the phone telling me, dude, just do it. Like, literally just do it. Like, it's never going to be a right time. You're never going to have the money. You're never going to, have a company that's like, if you're waiting on a company to cover it for you, you could be waiting forever. So just put it on a credit card and sign. I mean, pay rent, but you get what I'm saying. Like, don't, there's always 1,000 reasons why not to start. But starting is going to change your life. I guarantee it. Just keep at it. So
Absolutely.
definitely. Someone had asked a question. So other than the jujitsu that you do, how else do you keep your mental health and your productivity so high to be able to kind of balance this type of workload that you put yourself through?
Um, I don't want to sound like I'm a raging alcoholic, but like you gotta you gotta have an outlet, right? Jiu-jitsu is one of them. Screaming at little kids to get pooped on in Call of Duty is another one. There's this is a very high octane zone behind me, very very high octane zone. And I mean, you could probably see it in my eyes. Like I have bags around my eyes. I look like I'm 60 years old,
No,
from
don't.
from the nose up. So it's burnout comes to me in a very different way than that. It's not the job that burns me out. It's not the content that burns me out. People burn me out. I get very burned out on people, and that's probably opening up to a whole different conversation that could last another hour or two.
It could.
So I'll leave it at that.
Well, cool. I mean, that's the fact that this energizes you just means that you found the perfect field for you. Honestly.
Mhm.
Someone asks, what do you think about mastering wireless pen testing?
That is a tough one because enterprise environments are set up completely differently than your small home and office networks are. So, I mean, so instead of just like one or two access points, maybe they're bridged together in some form or another. They're going to be meshed together, and they're going to have some sort of backend TACX or radius built into them. And any attack that you can think of in like a typical small wireless network scenario isn't going to be applicable at all for those enterprise environments. So I don't want to say that it's not worth learning. It certainly is. It's just the bar to that is very high because now you're getting into cryptographic attacks and things that college students at MIT are studying. Like it goes from like level 1 to 100 immediately.
From Wi-Fi pineapple to MIT student.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, wireless is an interesting field because I think that there is a need to have a specialty there. Because it is such a thing that it goes so in depth and it can be so complicated that we need someone who really, really knows their shit and can be the go-to guy for that. So yeah, but at the same time, you also have to kind of think about return on investment. And I'm not saying that. I mean, obviously, Wi-Fi is everywhere, but how many companies pay for wireless assessment? And when they do, how much of that is worth? How much of their budget is that worth to them? Like, are they going to care about someone coming in and diving deep and spending 2 months on a wireless assessment, or are they going to probably spend that money on web applications or networks that host the back end databases that have all of their customers' sensitive data? Not saying that wireless doesn't connect to all that, but I think that there could be, it could be tougher to kind of find your customers if you're offering wireless assessments, or to find a company that kind of specializes in that. But
I agree with that.
it's an interesting topic for sure. What niche? And the other thing about wireless, especially when you have something like COVID, wireless assessments are hard to do remote. You kind of have to be there. I mean, I guess maybe you could ship a laptop. I don't know how that would work. Maybe it's possible, but I think you kind of need to be there. And
It'll certainly be difficult to do, and I'm almost certain that driving to employees of a customer's home is frowned upon.
right,
I would be surprised if that wasn't frowned upon.
right, yeah, I think that would probably be outside of scope for sure. But if you wanted to test the enterprise network, you know, um, with internal network testing, you just ship a laptop or you have them configure a VM for you. If it's external testing, you plug into the internet. If it's a web app, they give you access. You do it remote for the most part, um, unless you really find wireless assessments. What niches of pen testing do you like and wish to master? I think that's a question towards you. Yeah, I guess we never really did go down that path. I mean, we know some of your interests, but if you could have your own dream job, what is it? Do you know yet what it would be that you would want to specialize and be the best in?
It's hard to quantify because the field changes so drastically and so dynamically, almost literally every day. When I say mastery, is an ideal that I want to pursue. It's more it's more of a conceptual level of mastery than it is like a tactile, like something you can actually do on the job level of mastery. Because I mean, just as an example, if you wanted to try and master binary exploitation, that's awesome. You can certainly make a lot of money doing that. You can become a huge name in the industry by doing that. But that field just gets more and more complicated to get into every single day. And with CET by Intel coming out soon, I mean, return-oriented programming is very quickly going to become a thing of the past, and that's already a difficult topic to understand. So I mean, that's just one example. That's just binary exploitation. Like as web apps get more complex, there will be other pursuits to go on, but I mean, there's things that you could master today that could be irrelevant tomorrow.
But yeah, good point. So I mean, does that mean it might be better for your career to be a jack of all trades, or
I,
do you still
I,
pursue the?
I don't necessarily think so. I think it's very good to be. I think it's desirable to be good in all things, but there has to be some level of mastery, and maybe it's in one particular sector, maybe it's not. Maybe it's mastery over yourself. Like I
Oh,
said, I'm still on the journey to find that out.
we're getting deep here on the Infinite Logins YouTube channel. Let's see. SLMF says zero trust models will make all wireless networks untrusted by default, so hardening will be more of a baseline.
That's blasphemy, but that's also not wrong.
Zero trust is hard to get right, especially at a large scale. But if it's done right, then maybe we won't have jobs at all. How long are we going to wait for you, R box? I don't know. I don't know what you're trying to say for AG. A lot of mitigations against ROP like control flow integrity.
Control flow guard is a very difficult one. I do not understand control flow guard, and I don't think I will for a significant amount of time to come.
Though it might be focused on IoT stuff. That's what he was saying. Okay. Well, cool. I think we're all caught up in chat, so if there aren't any last minute questions, I do just want to thank you again, man. It's always great to kind of catch up with you. I would love to have this be like a repeat thing where you come on and we chat and we talk about different things, every few months or whatever. So anytime you want to come on and talk or whatever, just feel free to reach out. Guys, if you're watching this again, check out links in the description. Actually, there may not be there because my YouTube video got all messed up. But if you're watching this on VOD, I'll have the links in the description. You can go check out Cody's YouTube channel. Give him a follow on Twitter. He's doing a lot of really, really cool stuff. So, yeah, I'm excited to stay on the lookout for what's next for you. And again, I appreciate you coming on and spending some time with me here on your Friday.
Yeah, likewise, man. It's always a pleasure collabing with you, and I agree. We should do this more often.
Definitely. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for tuning in. And